everybody. Aloha, aloha, aloha. Hi, my friend. My two awesome friends who I admire so much. Well, aloha, everyone, as we are coming from two different places, two different sides of the island with Lieutenant Governor Josh Green, my classmate in the House of Representatives. Who would have thought that we'd be doing what we're doing now, right? And of course, he's in Honolulu in town, and I'm out here in Ewa Beach in my home. And we have Kalani Souza, our Reverend Kalani Souza, joining us. And we're just so honored to have both of you here during a very critical time in people's life where we've heard all the bad stuff over and over and over again. And now it's time for us to have a little hope and inspiration and knowing that we're going to be okay. I'm just going to do a little quick introduction. I know you folks, but just in case some people still don't know who you are, although I'm sure they do. So of course we have our guest, very special people, Lieutenant Governor Josh Green, who's really been at the front lines of this COVID crisis and has been my go-to guy every time I have a question and I need to get help for our community. He tells it like it is. And he's always been like that ever since I first met him. You may like it, you may not like it, but it is who he is, and he is not ashamed of who he is. I'm very proud of him, but he's been at the front line, making sure we're flattening the curve so that we can get back to work, back to our families, and getting going on what we've been doing before this crisis. But he's also a practicing emergency room physician on the Big Island. And of course, Kalani Souza, Reverend Kalani Souza, is a Native Hawaiian elder who I call a wisdom keeper, which we need a lot of right now, and founder and director of the Olohana Foundation, a nonprofit that focuses on building community, capacity, cohesiveness, resilience, what we need a lot of right now, and emergency preparedness around food, energy, water, and knowledge systems. And what we're playing for you a little earlier was just a snapshot of the type of a backyard garden that Kalani has helped to design with FEMA as a partnership to make sure that you can feed your own family if something does happen. So we're going to go straight to our Lieutenant Governor. Thank you so much for joining us. And why don't you just give us a quick update of how we're doing to flatten the curve?
Well, thank you, Kim. Fabulous of you to invite me. Thank you so much, and for your hard work. And you can see over my shoulder what we kind of do every day, which is we construct the real-time data just to demonstrate and show people what's exactly happening, not modeling, not speculation, exactly the numbers. So the green line over my left shoulder is an indication of the exact cases. We had an additional 13 cases today, of which 4 were actually on the mainland. They happen to be residents, so they count on our numbers. But the curve has been flattening very steadily, and it's because of people's hard work and because of your advocacy and the advocacy of Reverend Souza and everybody really doing their part and self-sacrifice. This is an extremely unique time where self-sacrifice is what's keeping the cases pretty low. And as that curve flattens and spreads out, it means that we will not have a big surge at one time. A surge would go up real high and down, but it would mean that it would outstrip our capacity to take care of people in the intensive care units and ventilators. So people isolating at home, wearing masks whenever they're out, 6 feet social distance between individuals, and hopefully not many people abusing the privileges of, you can't monitor everybody, right? That's working. And if we continue to do this, we will snuff this virus out by the end of the month. And then we'll have to turn our attention to other things like what do we do about bringing people in and what kind of precautions do we have? We've had 9 fatalities, which kind of breaks people's hearts because coronavirus, it's not just a common cold, it's quite a lethal virus and we have no immunity to it. I would remind people that every year we have 60 to 80 fatalities from the flu, but we do get the flu shot, so we feel we have some control over it. So that's kind of the overview of coronavirus right now. There have been clusters over at Maui Memorial Hospital, over at a McDonald's on Big Island in Kona. So it's little pockets of clusters, but for the most part, people are doing a great job of, listening to the instructions of the governor to lock it down, wearing masks, and then, of course, loving your family and friends, but keeping them, if they're not in your household, at a distance for a time.
So we noticed that we've been getting a lot of people sending us this video from Czechoslovakia, where they surprisingly had a very high number of cases, But what they did differently from every other place in the world, they did their social distancing. You know, no one went to work when they're sick. They shut everything down. But one thing that they did immediately was tell everyone going outside, you have to wear a mask. Are we close to that point where everyone should wear a mask? Are we going to make it a law?
We may very well make it a law if there's a government order for a pandemic. That's something that probably makes a lot of sense. In the future, I think we'll almost push a red button when we see some virus coming our way, freeze the stock markets, have people immediately isolate in place, know what our essential businesses and industries are immediately, and go into a 10-day or a 2-week lockdown, whatever is necessary. That would be better in the future. But as to wearing masks, I think the answer is yes. Anybody outside, unless you're exercising alone or with your loved one, where you obviously you're more intimate even at home, so you don't have to worry about spread beyond that, should wear a mask. This mask is the cloth mask. It's pretty helpful, but it doesn't do a lot. And then other masks like I have here, this is a much more serious mask, right? And these are the kind of masks that end up, this is a N95 mask, which people hear a lot about. This thing will take 95% of the particles out of the air. And I have these masks because I'm, an ER doc. And so I have these ones. And then my special friend sent me this one from Castle, Kathy Rathel. So yes, we should wear masks, and we should do it because we love each other and because we think it will help and because it will flatten the curve further.
Quick question. We need to do a mask education because, as you know, thanks to you and Dr. Miskovich, we brought some COVID testing to the Waianae Coast where we were starting to get some cases out there and we were a little alarmed. And so I was doing a video and the person said, I can't hear you, take off your mask. So I pulled my mask, I touched my mask and I put it by my neck. And of course, all the medical people yelled and screamed at me because I'm not educated on this. So they're saying that you're not supposed to put it underneath your neck or on your head. You have to think of it as a sterile object, right? And they said only remove it from the strings. Is that correct?
That's right. The less touching you do, the better. And the way the virus spreads is it gets into the mucous membranes, which is the nose, the mouth, and the eyes. That's the number one way to get it. And so if people have a mask that really doesn't fit very well and you're always adjusting it, you're gonna do yourself harm, actually. So there's two schools of thought about this. Number one, just it's better to have a mask so you don't spread stuff, and if you have a good one, so nothing comes in. But if you have a bad mask and bad policies on it, then the next thing you're sweating and you're moving it around, and you're picking your eyes and your nose, and then it's no good at all. So masks are only as good as you use them, and they should not be used to replace social distancing either. Even if you have a mask and you're out, please do still spend that 6 feet away. And then you see a curve like this one, very, very flat. That's every state in the country would kill for that flat curve right now. And our hearts are with them where they're losing people in New York and other states. So you guys are doing great, but we can always do better. And we only have like 16 days left in this month. If we do a great job, then we can kind of take the lid off a little bit and start getting back to normal.
I want to talk, this is about hope, right, during a crisis. And so we had some great news yesterday from my district. As you know, Eva Beach has a lot of cases. We're still trying to figure out why. And I'd like to work with the health department on that, of what's happening in this particular area. But a message from the Torta family that Mrs. Torta, whose son, of course, is in the hospital and on a respirator or a breathing machine, excuse me. We heard that she's just fine and she was just released by a doctor. And can you tell us of other survival stories and what people can do if they get it? Is there certain breathing techniques or things that they can do? And most importantly, staying positive, correct?
For sure. People do get better. Most people still get better. 80% of the people have very minimal symptoms, and really only about 1 in 100 end up in a heartbreaking situation to be on the ventilator, and still half will come off, which is quite a miracle. There's just so many stories. I was with a 97-year-old person this week in the ER that got better, and hard to believe, you just never can tell. I had a 51-year-old dear friend from college die though of it. So it's just, there's no rhyme or reason. You do have to have some faith, but there is hope. It sounds like Ms. Torta's son has been doing better. I'm hopeful. I know that you're saying prayers for him, which is very important. And we do turn to some of our spiritual self when these things happen, because it's so unpredictable. But there are stories everywhere, and I think actually a lot of people are seeing now how much they treasure their family, and these crises like this have a way of focusing on what's important for us. So that's the silver lining, if there is one. And also, it looks like we're going to get out of this thing with, not too many tragedies, hopefully.
All right. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor. And if you just joined us either on Zoom or on Facebook, you can go ahead and submit your questions either in the chat box, or there's a question box actually. It's probably better. It helps us to keep track of some of the questions. We may not get to all the questions, but we will be answering them either here on Facebook after we finish. And if you just joined us, we of course are discussing hope and healing amidst the COVID-19 crisis with my dear friends, Lieutenant Governor Josh Green and the Reverend M. Kalani Souza. So Kalani, I'm going to shift back to you for a little bit. We had some interesting questions come in before this, and they asked this question in very different ways, but it shows you where people are right now. The question being asked, is there a spiritual side to this disease crisis? Wow. From your perspective as a reverend, as a philosopher, as a Native Hawaiian healer?
Yeah, kind of waited for me, since I tend to think that there's a spiritual component to all things. But I know my grandfather would say, the body, the mind, and the spirit must all learn together. That the learning is a holistic experience for the human being. I know the stories are myriad, varied, touching, heartbreaking. I'm reminded that the moon is always half in shadow. We think that it's going through phases, but that's only because of our unique position, our perspective on the moon. If we change our position, we shift our perspective, we'd realize the moon is always half in shadow. These challenges that we face as family, as community, as individuals, these things are always with us. I think that the Lieutenant Governor is absolutely correct in saying that we are defined by how we respond in the moment. As you can see, I'm proud of that flatlining curve. We're getting serious about it, staying in place. I understand that people might feel their civil liberties are being put upon. I have the perspective that there is a power in we over me, right? That there is something about the equation when we think about the we of us, the our experience versus the I, me, mine, individual gain experience. Now, I'm suggesting that it's always hills and valleys. It's always the darkness of the moon, the fullness of the moon. So I'm not suggesting that it's one or the other. I'm suggesting that we give equal balance and time. There is a moment for us to operate as a community where the needs of the we outweigh the needs of the individual. And then there is a moment where the need of that individual outweighs the needs of the many, quoting Star Trek. So I think in Hawaii, we're uniquely positioned to be forgiving of others' foibles and others' eccentricities. So we really have an upper hand on this. We know how to be together. I said earlier, the word ha'ole was always just an instruction. It meant don't breathe with that one. That one, you honey, that's ohana, that one, ha'ole. No breathing with that one. I think it's interesting that the dominant narrative says, no breath, no breath. How does that mean white people? The fact is it doesn't. It never did, right? It means no breathing because of the cholera, because of the previous diseases that the Hawaiians experienced. So it means ha'ole. Don't breathe with that one. I think if there's another civil or silver lining to this, it's maybe we can all begin to get a new understanding of each other, of why things are the way they are. And to the Lieutenant Governor's point, as we get past the immediacy of this crisis, as we begin to re-engage, do we re-engage in a system that is off-sided and perhaps a little distressing to the host condition? Or do we in fact take this as an opportunity to rebuild in a new way that's sustainable, that's resilient, that enables us to not only serve the economics of the community, but serve the moral fiber, serve the ecology of the community, and serve the health and happiness of the entire environment, all of our relatives, two-legged, four-legged, winged, finned, vegetative, and even those poor humans.
Thank you so much, Kalani. There was a question where someone asked, you know, are there some Native Hawaiian healing cures? Of course, we will follow Dr. Green and other doctors' advice to us, you know, should we have this virus? Are there certain things or cures or healing practices that people from a Native Hawaiian perspective can do? Any kind of Native Hawaiian medicine or plants, for example?
Well, Native Hawaiian cultural practices always engaged in a high level of hygiene as compared to other cultures of the time. And with respect to their keel or their personal health, there was always a real attention to cleanliness, to moving these things in a good way. But my grandmother, my great-grandfather, they were all healers. And my grandmother was one of the first graduating Hawaiian nurses of Queens and became the head of OR at Leahi Hospital. She died in 1933 during the tuberculosis outbreak, along with my great-grandparents who had volunteered to be working at the time at the hospital. So we know a little something about epidemics and loss, you know, and we know that there are diseases that we only could term as foreign diseases, diseases we did not have the academic infrastructure to support methodologies to deal. So I think if you really look honestly at Hawaiian healers and the modality, we know what we're really good at. We also know what we're not good at. What we're facing here is something that requires much deeper coordination and much deeper concern if we want to protect our communities and families.
All right, thank you so much, Reverend Kalani Souza. I want to go back to Lieutenant Governor, and I'm reading.
You froze up a little there, Councilwoman. I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Go for it.
You can help me. Well, Josh, looks like we might have lost her on the feed.
How are you doing? It's good to see you, Reverend. We got control now. We've taken over.
I'm with you. I'm so with that. It's a big island thing, you know. I was saying it's the purview of good neighbors to be there to support each other. So as the neighbor islands, maybe this is the moment where Honolulu leadership starts looking at us seriously about what we're doing and what we can bring to the table.
That's right. And, you know, it's not lost on me either that the coronavirus, COVID-19, is crushing big cities and urban centers all around the world. Whereas, you know, we're very familiar, as is, of course, where Kim lives in the more rural setting, just the beautiful nature of being in a rural setting, how people lead their lives a little bit differently and how they're not as clustered. It's the clustering and the close contact, and that's obviously a big concern about spread. And so there's so many healthier things that can be done. And then there's the spirituality of course, the Big Island. I mean, I defer to you for that. But
Right. Following the science, though, Nate Wood and the Pacific Risk Management Ohana with the FEMA did a bunch of research 8 years ago and really revealed that the rural communities are the lifeblood of recovery for the metropolitan areas. But the dichotomy is politics, population numbers end up forcing the resources to the metropolitan area. And so you get this kind of catch-22, the resources where the capacity is not, and the capacity has no resources to keep itself afloat.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm back just to let you know.
Yay!
I switched to my phone because we had a huge storm over here and it just went out. And what I was about to say, and I'm so sorry, is that first of all, I find it unacceptable that your husband is not getting access to testing. I'm sure Lieutenant Governor touched on that. He and I both have the same belief that we test as many people as we can, especially those who are on the front lines that are protecting all of us. And so if you can, what I'll be doing is requesting, oh, I'm back again. Okay, sorry. Kalani, your spiritual energy is too. What I'm going to be doing on your behalf is I'm going to make sure that a lot of our emergency workers get the help that they need and the testing that they need. So I'll head it back to you, Lieutenant Governor, as I still try to figure my connection out.
Yeah, so it's a combination of so many things as we come to the end of our extra, special time with you, Kim. I mean, it's this crisis gives us a new perspective on what it means to have self-sacrifice and stay at home. It shows us what we can sustain and survive, whether it's economics or illness and loss. When we lose a friend, it shows us what we prioritize, whether it's time at home or just being well enough, even if our business is going to suffer. And then there's the realities of it, like an individual that feels fear because they couldn't get a test. And so we have to go and get testing and find out when that's going to be available. So I think everybody deserves to be tested if they've been in close contact with anybody that's been positive. And then, of course, there's a lot of background testing that has to be done. So there's so many elements to this. It's a fascinating and compelling moment in our time in history in Hawaii. And I'm completely confident, based on your theme of hope, that we're going to get through this absolutely okay. And those who leave us and leave the planet this time, it was their time to go. And it's heartbreaking, but that's also the case with heart disease and flu and so many things. But we'll come out of this a better society because we'll know what we value most. And we will look at our economy and we'll look at our structures and we'll say, these things are important to us and the other things aren't.
We had a question also come in when you were talking about the mask, saying, should I also wear eye coverings as well?
Yeah, I got some killer goggles that they let me have in the ER. And so I wore these big blue goggles and a mask, and I was scary looking, but I tell you, I had to be safe. I think, let me see if I have this, you guys will like this. I think my boy, Sammy, also made me this small talisman. I'm not, I'm actually not that superstitious, though I sometimes tease, but, we all have our ways just to protect ourselves literally and protect our hearts and give positive thought to the processes. And that's how we probably beat this thing. We got to be safe, though.
I want to go back to you, Kalani. So in the beginning of our town hall, we were just kind of showing what you and I have been talking about for a long time, how every person can be in charge of their own future, their own sustainability. What I'm seeing as a leader, my first calls that came in was, Kim, I can't pay my rent. I can't pay for food. I can't pay for medicine. What do I do? I said, what do you need the most right now? Right. And so he says, actually food and medicine. I said, okay, we're going to figure out how to get you the food, and then we'll figure out how to get you the medicine. And I realized after, you came to my mind, I realized what you and I had talked about, I think over a year ago, of how we shouldn't wait till there's a crisis, but we can right now, since a lot of us are at home, we can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
We can start what we were playing in the beginning of the show, the backyard garden, the 10 by 10 backyard garden. So this is about sustainability. So can you talk just a little bit about that? I think what we'll do is on Facebook, we'll put the link to the longer video so people can, and the instructions so people can learn.
Yo, I appreciate that. You know, the foundation, and that's them, www.olohana.org. Now, I helped them get started a few years ago, and they keep telling me, hey, you're the foundation, so talk for us. But it's mostly these young people right here, you know, they jump out and they do all this really interesting stuff, and they hold me accountable, you know, so, yeah, you know, the ability to care for our communities, to be in our communities, is just really important. And it's the mission of Olohana. It's the foundation of the work we do. And I mean, my grandfather used to say, if we do our jobs correctly, no one will remember we were here. They'll think they did it for themselves. You know, so that's in keeping with that. I think community and community capacity building is kind of like magic. You know, you sort of got to know the secret. And here's the secret. And the secret is Olohana is community. And you can't fake community. So thanks to Pierre and Pam Amidiar, the Amidiar Foundation and the Hawaii Community Foundation, and thanks to Winona LaDuke and the fine folks that honor the earth, we put together enough grant money to create this media station, a community media station with community volunteers who we do outreach, networking, and keep the community connected and cohesive. Hey, aloha everybody, we're outside. This is Kalani. This is where I live, see? This is my house right here. Kind of Hawaiian style with all the cars out front, the fence. This is my neighbor, Wayne Konashida.
Hello.
See, Wayne lives over here next door, you see? Wayne's house. Wow, remarkably different from my house. You notice the difference? My house, Wayne's house. See, my house, we own, so we can plant any plant we want to. But Wayne's house, he's renting, and his landlord don't like him plant any kind of plants.
They don't.
So, what can you do in that situation? You are not helpless. We can still do something.
Yes, we can.
Again, my house over here, and look this way, Wayne's house. See the difference? But Wayne and I working together, you see down there? We're taking advantage of the fence and we're planting on both sides. Wayne is planting beans, tomatoes.
Huh?
I have
Kalani.
pipinola, right?
Pipinola, squash,
Right, so we can work together.
bananas.
So you see Wayne's yard, grass and a lawn. My yard, food forest and a forest, old Hawaiian style. But still we can work together.
Yes.
So how can we do this? We set Wayne up right here to catch water.
In our catchment system.
We're gonna catch in our catchment system and we're gonna funnel water using those bamboos right there to build a trough to run water towards a garden system. Let's go see the garden system. Oh, see, so we're planting inside these pots, kale growing, and using the bamboo. We never have lumber, no could go to the market, so we use the bamboo. We cut down the bamboo, started planting the lettuces, the radicchio, the bok choy, the choy. So even though you're only renting, you can still do something.
This is what we can do.
Yeah, we can do, and we all do what we can do, and then we all share. The whole point.
Thank you so much, Kalani. I'm so honored.
I quarantined myself for 21 days, and he was quarantined for 21 days. It's like we both not sick. We can start working together.
Yes.
So we find ourselves. So there we go. You know, it's the rural community, and we're having to work together as neighbors. I've been watching him for 3 weeks. He's been in his house. I've been
Well,
in
I
my
think what
house
you're
for 3 weeks.
I think what you've just showed is that, and Lieutenant Governor Josh Green talked about this. We're going to get through this by
Exactly.
working the community working together, everyone needing to know, what do you have? What can we do to come together? We
Exactly.
can't just be staying home, worrying, stressing about what we don't have. We need to come together to create something to have. So I want to go back to you, Lieutenant Governor Green. We've had a lot of questions for you. One particular question was, I have to travel soon to help an ailing family member. Do you have any tips for that particular person?
Well, if you have to go, you got to go, and there are some rules about travel to certain states, but you'll have to deal with whatever their quarantine recommendations or isolation recommendations are, but you will be able to be in the home with that loved one. And of course, when you come back, anybody who's returning, and today we had a couple hundred people returning, they go into 14-day home isolation with their families. So just anticipate that, although we're now getting pretty close to the end of April, and it's not completely clear whether we're going to have people go into full isolation. The process will probably include some isolation after April 30th, but we will start opening up our society. But go take care of your kupuna or whomever you got to take care of.
So, Lieutenant Governor Green, of course, I'm sure you've been getting these questions, a lot of frustrations with unemployment office. Is there any hope that this is going to change and that people are going to get through? I think the biggest frustration, and we just wrote a letter to the director of the department saying that the biggest frustration people have is that there's no response, no communication on where they are in the queue. Any discussions that you can share with any improvements of that department?
Yes, it's hard because there's like 200,000 people, which is such a gigantic number. We've never seen anything like that. We're used to getting a couple thousand in a week. We get 200,000 in 2 weeks. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to streamline the work process, bring a lot of extra people in to support feedback. The website crashes a lot. We've quietly sent a memo over to, I believe, to see if they can bifurcate the website so that a couple different areas of people go into the website. And it would be good if we could also segregate based on names. So like maybe A through H, I through M or some such thing. We need to do that. It will lighten up. It'll thin out just like everything else. And I do expect that the economic reality is going to be pretty tough for a little while, because even though society will start coming back to normal, just there's not going to be a lot of restaurant activity or hotel activity for a good long while. So that's going to be tough. But we'll get everyone their checks, and we're going to ask landlords to be generous and not kick people out if they're a little late.
Another question people are saying is, okay, how do people, in addition to the social distancing, washing your hands, staying home, what can we do personally to make ourselves stronger and more resilient in the face of this disease?
Well, it's an incredible challenge, right, when you're stuck at home, but there are ways. You can get physically stronger by exercising, obviously. You can get intellectually stronger by taking the time to read when people haven't had time to read for months or years because they just didn't feel like that. And then there are some of our churches that are doing spiritual exercises like you're doing today with Zoom meetings and Facebook Live and so on. It's quite something, right? So a lot of this is introspective time, and that's how you get stronger. But I think the best thing to do is get stronger emotionally by being with your loved ones. That's the very most important thing. That by far outstrips anything else, in my opinion, as far as strength goes.
I have to agree to that. And you and I were in necessary positions, so we don't get to take the time off. And so I'm working from home. I'm trying to accomplish things, but I'm my own boss. And I was doing what I normally do every day. And I had my little 5-year-old just looking at me like, "You're here. Are you going to do anything?" And then I realized that it really isn't a moment for all of us. And I know that everyone's afraid of their finances just being ruined right now, paying their bills, just surviving. But we're letting those discussions take place before the opportunities that we have in this moment to really reintroduce ourselves to our families, right? See what we can do to help our neighbors. And so I want to go back to Kalani, who, this is a great question for you to finish this part of the conversation is, what do you do when you are confined at home? How do you stay spiritually healthy, personally healthy, mentally healthy from a Native Hawaiian perspective?
Yeah, there's an old Hawaiian style decision-making called hana ikalima. It means working with the hands, a way of expressing yourself and being very clear, and it's everything from voting and, to pitching in to working. And I keep thinking about how, from a Hawaiian perspective, we always think it's in the doing that the knowing is. So, Lieutenant Governor is correct when he says, look at the challenge when you're in a situation where there is no doing. You're not going to rush out and hug someone. You're not. And I think now this is the moment in the world that should have been anticipated. We live a very consumer life. We live a life where we're assaulted by media, we're assaulted by messages, particularly in the world of modernity. Not to say that the third world nation is not impacted by the behavior of these consumer cultures. Well, right now, we're all getting the opportunity to have a transpersonal moment to reflect on who we are in this moment, how we react. I've seen the rise of domestic violence in the last few weeks. It's an unfortunate collateral damage that speaks to greater, deeper problems in our society that we mustn't forget, we need to address, maybe not in the immediacy. But right now, I think he's correct. We can take this moment to decide who we are going to be. What are we bringing to the table? This moment, it doesn't come around often for individuals, and remarkably, it's come around for the whole planet. You know what I mean? So I don't think we should miss this opportunity to be the better people we always thought we could be, right? This is the perfect handshake. Most of us are taking off our pancake and our makeup, and we're showing up in our bathrobes, and we're just getting done what we can get done. And I think there's real beauty.
I have shorts underneath this nice top.
I'm with you, sister.
Okay.
So, I think it goes like this. The first rule is, are the children fed? Do we have food? Do we have resources? Can we feed the children? The second rule is, are the old people comfortable? Not getting by. Are they comfortable? Are we accommodating for diminishing capacity? Do we have our medicines? Are we able to see through to the long end? Do we value wisdom over data sets? And then finally, are the women unafraid? If we look into our society across the kitchen table, across the pillow at night, are the women unafraid? Can you look in their eyes and see that they're holding tough? I think the men are here to answer that question, to provide the sustenance and the husbandry to allow the women to take care of the rest of the needs of society. So I believe in human beings. I believe in us. I believe that our grandparents made it through the Great Depression and then the war. Right? Not just the depression, the economics, the disease, and then the war, right? And we still got here. We're still here. So I believe in us, everybody. I got faith.
Thank you for your wisdom, Kalani. I'm just going to share. For some reason, on this topic spiked a bunch of questions and comments at the same time, both on Facebook as well and on the Zoom chat. So one person said, stop watching so much COVID news. It's toxic to get too much bad news. Another person said, super high dose of vitamins, especially vitamin C, D, A, zinc, immunity health is everything. So I want to go back to you, Lieutenant Governor Green, and thank you so much. I know you're so busy, but taking the time to be with your friends here. So a lot of people, we had several different questions from different, from Facebook as well as Zoom, is they're talking about the Singapore model then I'm sure you might know what they're doing in Singapore. And it's also a tourism economy. As you mentioned earlier, we have a heavy tourism economy. And how do we get back to normal? Is there going to be a certain opening of different businesses, or which business can go first? What are the discussions that people are having, looking at the Singapore model as well as our own needs to open up the economy again?
Yes, so that's an excellent question. So the way they did succeed in Singapore was they were very rigorous in hunting down the virus. And I use a wartime metaphor because it has that feeling, right? It has the feeling of an assault against us. May not be that, but that's what it feels like. So what they did is they tracked down every possible contact of people who were positive, and then they tested them, and then they tested all the individuals that then tested positive and their contacts. They also used a lot of good technology, and they were able to shelter in place to a degree also. They're much more accustomed to using masks in Asia. It's been a long-standing issue for them. They have more of these strange viruses that break loose. The SARS and MERS viruses were very prevalent in 2002 and 2012, respectively, in Asia. So they were ready in those senses, and we need to do those same things, which is what I'm promoting day by day. And then to open up our state, I do feel strongly that we're going to need a plan to reboot. And to what our spiritual leader was saying, we should look at what we really want to be. We certainly are going to have tourists here, and we're going to have that be a large part of what we do no matter what. But we are going to have to be safe as we bring people back here. We're more mindful now than ever that we have to be ready for this kind of issue. When one thing goes away and it devastates us this bad, it tells us that we've been overly focused on one industry. So I'm hopeful that there will be new things that happen, whether it's young people exploring new professions, having think tanks, and using the university to start amazing technologies, to focus back on sustainable agriculture and Hawaiian culture, because doing that, having a sustainable way to actually feed ourselves and have economic growth here in our backyard, I think, as was alluded to earlier, with a 10-foot garden that could produce and be nutritional and maybe even make some money for us or trade, very key. And so there's so many magical things we can do, including even energy research, which is very natural. Kind of our nature and our environment and our spirit has given us the oceans and all sorts of power that comes in to our culture. So there's so many things that we can do better going forward and be less dependent on one thing. And so we'll open the state up by using some high-tech stuff and antibody tests and negative PCR. That's the doctor side of me, and making sure we have asymptomatic places where we can test people's body temperature and do rechecks, all that stuff, and apps on our phones. And then we'll also look internally and find out ways that we cannot be so focused on the urban culture and devices and the money that has to come in our minds. It has to come in. So we can change greatly for the better. And when we reboot, we'll reboot, I think, smarter and more connected to what really matters most, our land and our people.
I definitely agree with you, Lieutenant Governor Green. We were talking about this, and I'm the chair of the Economic Development and Tourism Committee, and some of the things we started studying was we realized that we had too many people here, and we were actually destroying our natural resources to the point that people didn't want to come here anymore. And so we were bringing a different type of tourist that we had in the 1980s. What we revealed in our committee was, with economist Paul Brubaker, when they did a study, is that people in the 80s were a different type of tourists. They came less frequently, but they would come and they'd spend a lot of money and they would respect the area and the land. And over time, we just, I guess, got a little greedy in our leadership in the tourism industry. And so they just opened it up to everybody of all different kinds. Just, they thought more masses means more money, but what the economists revealed is that we had the same money coming in that we did in the 1980s, but double the tourists, which means that we were overusing a lot of our resources. And so I think this is a great opportunity as we rebuild that industry, because we will always have a little part of that in our economy. But we need to be very selective of what type of tourist industry that we want to create. And most importantly, though, we have to recenter on our natural resources and make sure that we never damage our mountains, our streams, our oceans ever again. And so as we rethink this tourism, that has to be a priority. For me as a leader, how we are going to truly reopen our economy in a very safe way is you have got to have testing before people come here. I know that other people in some of the state committees that they've been having saying, let's test once they get here. But really, how are you going to get anyone to want to come here if the person sitting next to them has COVID? Or how are you going to keep a person that lives here safe if the person visiting also has COVID? And so it's a lot more complicated, but I believe that if we want to open up our economy, at least especially in Hawaii, and still have that additional income from others, we have got to do the testing first. And so, Kalani, do you have any insights of that?
Well, we have been watching climate change dramatically on the planet, and it's going to suggest that this will not be the only mutant virus we're going to experience in the next several human generations on the planet. The iteration in its second pass may be even more devastating than the first. And when we look at pandemics and these threats that are going to happen, they're going to continue to the human race. And you're right, the human race is mobile and moving around the planet. And thanks to guys like Mark Twain, tourism is a big thing. But what kind of tourists and how are we operating? I'd like to challenge us. I got an old saying. I got a lot of old sayings, Kalaniisms, right? This is one of them. When life hands you lemons, you ought to pour the tequila. You shouldn't just make lemonade. You should take the really bad news and turn it into a party. So I'm suggesting that we shouldn't think about how do we recover the tourist industry. We should be thinking about how does Hawaii lead the world into the new kind of tourists? What is the responsibility of the visitor industry? We have a really interesting thing we do as humans. We always tend to look at the disaster and then go, oops, and then we plan for the disaster to just happen. We don't do preparedness as advanced work. We do it as reactive work. And we say things like, oh, it's an act of God. Well, to tell you the truth, the problem in Puna with those 700 plus houses is an act of the Hawaii Realtors Association. You can go back to the 1960s and look at the legislative record. So let's get real when we talk about Hawaii and what we can do. We can lead the world. The whole world is wondering what tourism does now. We can be trendsetters.
Well, we're definitely, as I've been saying before, is we have to keep Hawaii, Hawaii. That is the main thing, that as we move to this transition, because I think we kind of lost ourselves along the way. Money, 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 greed, 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 right? What makes us wonderful and beautiful is our people and our natural resources. And so we're going to lose Lieutenant Governor Josh Green because he's got to go out there and work for us and save all of us. And so
good man.
I want to leave some final comments with you, Lieutenant Governor Green. And if you just joined us, I'm with Lieutenant Governor Josh Green and Reverend Kalani Souza, both incredible men who have deep insights of how we get out of this crisis. And so what are your last words, Dr. Green, Lieutenant Governor Green, about how do we move forward from here? How do we lift ourselves up when we don't have money, we're worried about our health, we're not sure if we can feed ourselves? What is your advice as our leader of the state?
My advice, and thank you very much for inviting me, Kim, very, very much. And you, Kalani, amazing to be with you. My advice is don't be afraid. Simply don't be afraid, because when people come out of the other side of this crisis and are alive, there will be so many opportunities to reshape our economy, to experience what will become a surge again in opportunities for us as our families are liberated from this home confinement, but also the world does look to us and loves Hawaii and will come back. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. And we are also going to be much better prepared for the next crisis, especially if it looks anything like this one, a virus or something that is overtly invisible, but very, very scary for people. Don't be afraid of it. Be smart about it. Be smart in your self-sacrifice, which is what you have done. I'm so proud of people that have given us this green line over my shoulder instead of the red line over my shoulder. The red line would have been catastrophic for us as a people, and I mean a people, one Ohana. And the green line is the way we're staying alive and will emerge. So be smart. If I may, Kim, welcome people to always reach out to me if it's okay. They can do the social media thing, which is, I think it's at LTGov Josh Green. If you can share that with them, at LTGov Josh Green, or Lieutenant Governor Josh Green on Facebook, whatever you like to do. Please be in touch, and you have a great opportunity to go right through Kim. She and I, we've been close friends since we came together to the legislature in 2004, and I have to say, you've aged much better than me, and it's a testament to better positive attitude and less grumpiness, which I'm notorious for. But if I seem serious or passionate about things, it's because I worry that we could lose loved ones, and you guys have made such an incredible self-sacrifice to get us through till the 30th of April, and we will have really done an extraordinary thing here as one Ohana. And then we go forward maybe as better partners, and maybe we don't have the same heartbreak when we struggle over things like the Mauna on Big Island, or the question about a park, which probably doesn't need to be a silly sporting facility. I mean, maybe we focus on the things that we love most, which is a clean environment and new opportunities for our people.
Kalani, any last words from you?
Just that it's good to see you guys. It's really nice to talk to real community, and jump out. We've always had a struggle here in the islands. You know that. We've always been able to overcome. We overcome because we have faith in each other, right? We overcome because it's what our parents did. It's what our grandparents did. It's what we do, so I believe in Hawaii. I work on a national and international level, as you guys know. At home, I just try to keep low key, play a little music, eat a little poke, hang around with everybody and see what's up. The problems we face in Hawaii are a microcosm of the problems faced in the world. We can seriously help all humans reach new potential. We need to work on our own self-healing. We need to be ready to step up to the plate when the call comes. I believe in us. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Josh. I really like the work you guys are doing. Awesome. Let's just keep plugging.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Special thanks to my good friend, Dr. and Lieutenant Governor Josh Green, and the Reverend Kalani Souza. So we've heard a lot today, and I'm sorry we couldn't ask some of the panelists your questions, but we are going to be actively answering your questions for you, either on Facebook or here on Zoom. We've heard a lot about today, about the importance of keeping ourselves mentally and physically healthy. It's very important at this time during a crisis that we come together as a community. No more us against them. It can only be we. It is only through we and aloha that makes Hawaii so special, that we are going to fix our economy and all get working again, that we are going to find a way to keep all of us healthy and protected. And most importantly, as the panelists discussed, as we look and try to survive this crisis, we are going to look to a new Hawaii and a new future that will keep us resilient and never again dependent on anyone else. So I love all of you folks. Thank you to Lieutenant Governor Green and Kalani for joining us. Love all of you guys. Stay safe, and we'll have more of these in the future. Mahalo.
Faith.